A lot of you have been asking me about a new code for app coins. There is actually one out right now, Aevatrex May, all in capital letters, for an extra 5% bonus. It is only going to be active until the end of today, so make sure that you load up before it goes away. It is not going to be a permanent one. That is something that it's still being worked on to see if we can get that back. But for right now, Aevatrex May, all capital letters, is the code that you want to use. I have had people tell me that they ran into issues, but if you do run into issues with like actually using the code and whatnot, what you may need to do is actually update your app. So make sure that you have everything up to date and then use that code for that 5% bonus. What's going on, people? Today we're going to go over a hit that what happened last DA. And I kept it saved because I wanted to go over it and show you guys why I picked the familiars that I did and how it actually ended up working for me. Now, I did a familiar video not too long ago talking about just this very thing, but the thing is that I don't really get rallied, so it's not a lot of opportunities for me to actually test it. But last D8 versus 3v3, I was actually able to be rallied, and it worked out perfectly because they actually went infantry and I stayed ranged just to see how that would work out. Now, there's a couple of things that we got to go over, right? Because obviously DA, a lot of times some things can be skewed. So here's the first thing that I want to mention in this, right? First of all, their rally was almost all T5, which you are seldomly not going to run into because for obvious reason, you want to go 60-40, that way you don't lose your T5, etc. But their rally was like 80%, something along those lines, so that would cause a lot more damage. The other thing that I want to note is that my actual T4 and T5 count was way lower than I usually have it. Like, my T5 is usually 1.5, which makes a big difference. And my T4, I basically have like no T4 here. If you want to take a look at my actual numbers, right, let me go ahead and show you what I normally run. And granted, I'm actually low on T4 right now. So, yeah, so I have 1.5 T5 and let's just say like 1.3, 1.4 T4. So, the numbers there are way lower. So again, there's two factors there. Their T5 is way higher than normal, and my T5 and my T4 count is way lower than normal. But I did take it in gear, and I believe I was in talent, so there is also that. So here's the damage, right? So sharpshooters 1.9, and then the gladiators it's 4.3, or I guess 439,000, and I'm pretty sure that's all just because of the familiar damage. And this is also why I have my troop set up the way that it is. There's a reason why gladiators are a million more than sharpshooters, and that's because generally, unless it's like a counter rally, generally I like to take rallies in range wedge. And when you take a rally in range wedge, but your infantry is your highest number, your front line is going to be range, which is what it was here. But since my gladiators and my infantry was the highest troop count, then it takes their actual familiar damage away from my front line, which is the sharpshooters. So this is how it worked out. Now the main question here is about the familiars. My familiars specifically on defense. Now I have said that the 600% familiars are pretty much must-haves. They are just insanely good to stop a rally. But the other two, there's a lot of discussion like, okay, well, what's actually better, etc. If you know what formation you're going to take rallies in, then this is the ones that I would suggest. For me, I use Snow Shield, protects 7% of your ranged troops from a killing blow when 12% of your ranged troops have fallen. Now, you might think that 12% is a lot, but it's 12% of your ranged troops. So that doesn't really take a lot, unless your ranged troops are just freaking 20, 30 million or something like that, right? And then the last one, it kind of goes hand in hand. Increase range max HP by 80% for 10 seconds when 10% of your ranged troops have fallen. So these two go hand in hand, and these actually go hand in hand as well, because 4% of your troops, it's about going to be equal 10% of your front line. So how did it work out? Well, let me go ahead and show you exactly how this went, because in my mind, when I set it up, this is exactly how I thought it would go. And it's exactly how it went. So let's go ahead and see. Like I mentioned, it was an infantry rally. He went infantry failing, so the infantry was pretty much right up front. So they're going to go ahead and get their familiars off, because obviously they're going to start losing more troops quicker. So there they all go. There we go. There goes their shield. Okay, now watch this, right? Watch what happens. Okay, first of all 3 of my 600% actually came out, as well as the sorcerer in the back. Watch this. You see him in the back? So all 4 of my familiars came out and actually procced right then and there. Now watch what happens to my troops lost when the shield goes up. Look, 41.2. Still not losing any. 41.2. 41.2. And now I'm actually losing troops. But at that point, I barely lost any. So as you can tell, when my familiars procced, it basically ended the fight. Like, they were doing decent damage up until my familiars procced. And the way that I like to set up my familiars is I want to set up my familiars to actually help me if I'm countered, not necessarily if I'm doing the countering, because if you're doing the countering, you don't necessarily need all the help. But if you're the one being countered, then definitely that's when you want your familiars to absolutely help you out, put out the bleeding, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and show it from this perspective, the other one, that way you see my familiars proccing. And take a look at my troop stats right here, right? So there goes all 4, 41.5. And since they procced, look at the amount of troops that I actually lose. I lose maybe 300, 400k. And also remember that a lot of those troops I'm losing, probably because of their own familiar damage that's still going on. Because remember, the 150% one is overtime. So the way that I set it up, I'm very, very happy with this familiar choices that I have. The one downside for sure though is that this is very specific on like taking rallies in a range formation, range wedge for instance. Like if I take it in an infantry formation, these last 2 wouldn't help me at all. So that's the only downside to it. So I would suggest you do this if you know the formation that you're generally going to take rallies. If not, then you can go for the ones that will help you just in general, the 15% extra HP or whatever it may be. But I'm actually very happy with this results, especially given the circumstances. You know, their rally was very high T5 count. My T4 and T5 count were pretty much like non-existent. I had like not even a million of each troop, something like that. It was just terrible. And to see the damage on a full counter, mind you, to be this little, makes me feel good about it. Makes me feel good about it. But either way, hopefully this helps you out, help you set up your familiar and how you want to go about it. But yeah, appreciate you guys for coming through. And remember, the code is Aevatrex May for app coins. It's going to be effective up until reset today. So make sure you take advantage of that and you share with your guild or whatever chats you may be in. But anyway, appreciate you guys for coming through. And until later, bye.